The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the dense forest. Shadows danced among the trees, and a chilling wind rustled the leaves. It was a night that held secrets, a night where the forest whispered tales of terror to those brave enough to listen. The village of Eldertree sat on the edge of this mysterious woodland. For generations, the villagers had heard stories about the haunted forest. They spoke of strange disappearances, ghostly apparitions, and eerie sounds that echoed through the trees at night. No one dared to venture into the forest after dark, for fear of never returning. But one young man, driven by curiosity and a thirst for adventure, decided to uncover the truth. His name was Jack. Tall and lanky, with a mop of unruly brown hair, Jack was known for his courage and stubbornness. He had heard the stories all his life, and while they scared him, they also intrigued him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the villagers hurried to their homes, Jack stood at the edge of the forest. His heart pounded in his chest, but he was determined. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the journey ahead, and stepped into the forest. The darkness swallowed him almost immediately. The canopy of trees overhead blocked out the moonlight, and Jack could barely see a few feet in front of him. He walked slowly, his feet crunching on the fallen leaves and twigs, his ears straining to catch any sound. It wasn't long before he heard the first whisper. It was faint, almost like a breeze, but it was definitely a voice. Jack stopped in his tracks, his breath catching in his throat. He listened intently, but the whispering ceased. He shook his head, trying to dispel the unease that was creeping over him, and continued on. As he ventured deeper into the forest, the whispers grew louder. They seemed to come from all directions, surrounding him. Jack's pulse quickened, but he pressed on, his curiosity outweighing his fear. Suddenly, a scream pierced the night. It was a blood-curdling sound that made Jack's blood run cold. He turned in the direction of the scream and saw a faint light flickering through the trees. Without thinking, he ran towards it. He burst into a small clearing and froze. In the center of the clearing stood an old, decrepit cabin. The light was coming from inside, flickering like a dying fire. The door of the cabin hung ajar, creaking slightly in the wind. Jack approached cautiously, his heart hammering in his chest. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The interior was dark and musty, filled with cobwebs and dust. The only light came from a small lantern on a rickety table. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him. Jack spun around, but there was no one there. The whispers grew louder, filling the cabin with their eerie cadence. Jack felt a chill run down his spine as he realized he was not alone. A figure emerged from the shadows, its form barely visible in the dim light. It was a woman, her eyes wide with terror, her face pale and gaunt. She looked at Jack with a mixture of fear and desperation. Help me," as she whispered, her voice trembling. Please help me." Jack took a step forward, his instincts telling him to help her, but something held him back. There was something off about the woman, something that set his nerves on edge. Who are you?" she asked, his voice shaking. The woman stepped closer, her eyes pleading. My name is Eliza. I've been trapped here for so long. The forest, it's alive. It feeds on fear, on souls. You have to get out before it's too late." Jack's mind raced. He wanted to believe her, but the stories of the haunted forest echoed in his mind. He knew he had to be careful. How do I get out?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Eliza shook her head, tears streaming down her face. There is no way out. Once you're in, you're trapped. But you can survive. You have to stay brave. Don't let the forest consume you." Jack's heart sank. The weight of her words settled on him like a heavy cloak. He knew he had made a grave mistake by entering the forest, but it was too late to turn back now. Suddenly, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. The walls of the cabin seemed to close in on them, the darkness growing thicker. Jack felt a cold hand on his shoulder and turned to see another figure emerging from the shadows. It was a man, his face twisted in agony, his eyes hollow and empty. "They're coming," Eliza whispered, her voice filled with dread. "We have to hide." Jack's mind raced. He didn't know what to do, but he knew he had to act fast. He grabbed Eliza's hand and pulled her towards a small trapdoor in the corner of the cabin. They scrambled down into the darkness below, the whispers following them like a swarm of angry bees. In the pitch black of the cellar, Jack and Eliza huddled together, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The whispers seemed to be all around them, growing louder and more menacing. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to think of a way out. "Is there any other way?" he whispered to Eliza. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "And no. This is the only place they can't reach. But we can't stay here forever. The forest will find us eventually." Jack felt a surge of despair. He had come into the forest seeking answers, but all he had found was terror and hopelessness. He knew they couldn't stay hidden forever, but he had no idea how to escape the forest's grasp. Suddenly, a faint light appeared in the darkness. It was coming from a small window high up on the wall. Jack's heart leapt with hope. Maybe there was a way out after all. Come on," he whispered to Eliza. We have to try." They scrambled up the wall, their fingers scrabbling for a hold. Jack pushed Eliza up first, then followed her through the narrow window. They emerged into the moonlight, the forest still whispering around them. Jack looked around, trying to get his bearings. He had no idea where they were or how to get out, but he knew they couldn't stay where they were. They had to keep moving. They ran through the forest, the whispers following them like a pack of wolves. Jack's lungs burned with exertion, his legs felt like lead, but he pushed on, driven by a desperate need to survive. As they ran, Jack noticed something strange. The trees seemed to be moving, shifting positions as if trying to trap them. The forest was alive, just as Eliza had said, and it was trying to consume them. They burst into another clearing and saw a figure standing in the center. It was a man tall and imposing, with eyes that glowed like embers. He looked at them with a mixture of amusement and malice. Welcome," he said, his voice cold and menacing. "I see you've met my friends." Jack's heart sank. He knew they were in trouble. This man, whoever he was not someone to be trifled with. Who are you?" Jack demanded, trying to sound brave. The man smiled, a cruel, twisted smile. "I am the keeper of the forest. And you, my dear boy, have trespassed on my domain." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. He knew they were in serious danger. But he couldn't let fear consume him. He had to stay brave, just as Eliza had said. We just want to leave," Jack said, his voice trembling. We mean no harm." The man laughed, a cold, mirthless laugh. Leave? Oh, my dear boy, there is no leaving. The forest has claimed you. You belong to it now." Jack felt a surge of panic. He knew he had to do something, but he didn't know what. He looked around, trying to find a way out, but the trees seemed to close in on them, their branches reaching out like claws. Suddenly, Eliza stepped forward, her eyes blazing with determination. "And no," as she said, her voice steady. We don't belong to the forest. We belong to ourselves. And we will find a way out." The man sneered, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Jack felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way out. Together, Jack and Eliza faced the keeper of the forest, their hearts filled with determination. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but they were willing to fight for their freedom. The whispers grew louder, the forest closing in around them, but they stood their ground, ready to face whatever came next. And so, the battle for their souls began. The forest was dark and treacherous, but Jack and Eliza were not alone. They had each other, and they had hope. And sometimes, Hope is all you need to find your way out of the darkness. The keeper of the forest glared at Jack and Eliza, his eyes narrowing with anger. He raised his hand, and the trees around them seemed to come to life, their branches twisting and writhing like snakes. Jack and Eliza braced themselves, ready to fight. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening, but they didn't back down. They knew they had to stay strong, no matter what. The keeper stepped forward, his eyes blazing with fury. "You think you can defy me?" he snarled. "You think you can escape?" Jack stood tall, his heart pounding in his chest. "We're not afraid of you," he said, his voice steady. "We'll find a way out. We won't let the forest consume us." The keeper's eyes flashed with anger, and he lunged at them, his hands reaching out like claws. Jack and Eliza fought back with all their might, their hearts filled with determination. The battle raged on, the forest around them shifting and changing. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, but Jack and Eliza didn't give up. They fought with everything they had, their hope driving them forward. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the keeper fell back, his eyes wide with shock. He looked at Jack and Eliza, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. You can't." He stammered, his voice trembling. "You can't defeat me." Jack stepped forward, his eyes blazing with determination. We just did," he said, his voice strong and steady. "And now we're getting out of here." The keeper let out a roar of anger, but he didn't move. Jack and Eliza turned and ran, their hearts pounding with hope and relief. They didn't know where they were going, but they knew they had to keep moving. As they ran, the forest seemed to part before them, the trees moving aside to let them pass. The whispers grew fainter, the darkness lifting. Jack felt a surge of hope. They were going to make it. They were going to escape. Finally, they burst out of the forest and into the moonlight. They looked back, seeing the trees closing behind them, the whispers fading into the distance. They had made it. They were free. Jack turned to Eliza, his heart filled with gratitude and relief. We did it," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. We made it out." Eliza smiled, her eyes shining with tears. Yes," as she said softly. We did." They stood there for a moment, basking in the moonlight, their hearts filled with hope and relief. They had faced the darkness and come out the other side. And they knew, no matter what, they would always have each other. In the days that followed, Jack and Eliza returned to the village of Eldertree. They told the villagers their story, sharing the tale of their harrowing journey through the haunted forest. The villagers listened in awe and disbelief, their eyes wide with wonder. The stories of the forest's terrors faded, replaced by tales of hope and courage. The villagers no longer feared the forest, knowing that it could be faced and overcome. Jack and Eliza became heroes, their names whispered in admiration and respect. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, their courage and determination lighting the way for others. And though the forest still whispered its secrets, its terrors, Jack and Eliza knew that they had nothing to fear. They had faced the darkness and come out stronger. They had found hope in the midst of despair, and they had shown the world that even in the darkest of places, there is always a way out. The haunted forest would always hold its mysteries, its shadows, but Jack and Eliza had proven that with courage and determination, even the darkest of places could be conquered. And their story, their triumph, would live on, a beacon of hope and strength for generations to come.